Their reaction to this one part of your campaign pitch is going to tell you everything you're going to need to know about if they should have a seat at that table. People, players, DMs, and GMs, welcome back to the Silver Dice Society. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be talking all about how to pitch your next D&D or tabletop RPG campaign. First of all, what is a campaign pitch, and why do we even need to pitch our campaigns in the first place? A campaign pitch is pretty simple. It's a document, usually either half a page to 2 pages long, outlining different aspects of your campaign that are required buy-in for your players to participate in said campaign. Across the tabletop gaming landscape, there are tons of variances in campaigns, especially when we get into homebrew settings and custom campaigns, or settings that players just might not have played yet, different systems. All of these things can vary greatly, and so it's best to, prior to your campaign, this is pre-session 0, pitch your campaign to your prospective players. It's pretty simple. It can be done in just a few steps, and then you can be sure that everyone at your table is there to have fun and there for a similar experience. If someone isn't interested in your campaign, this is the point where they'll be able to tell, oh, this is the kind of campaign that's not all that interesting to me. Maybe it's like a full combat campaign and they're more of a role player, or maybe it's just a really high difficulty campaign and they just want to goof around. This is the time when you can weed people out who aren't interested, and a very polite way to just let them know what they're in for prior to session 0 before anyone is committed to it. This is the way to do that. Now, there are 2 ways to approach a campaign pitch. There is the I have written a campaign, have my pitch, and I'm ready to show it to you. There's only one campaign I want to run, and I'm just going to pitch it to as many people until I get the players that I want that are interested. Or there is the I have a set group of friends that are interested in playing, and I want them all to play at my table. I'm going to pitch them 2 or 3, maybe even 4 different campaign options, and let them choose, you know, popular vote or talk amongst themselves and come to a common ground on which campaign will work best for that group. Either way, campaign pitches can be very valuable and should be something that is approached with your intended group prior to session 0. So, what should your campaign pitch include? The very first thing it should include is a short description of your campaign. And when I say short, I mean short. This description shouldn't be longer than a paragraph, maybe a paragraph and a half if you're stretching it. It should include a little bit of information about the world, but you should be mostly focused on the themes of your campaign, the style of campaign, and you should especially be focused on the main plot points, the main thing that people will probably be doing. If the main plot point is going to be that the king is murdered and you're going to be the group that has to deal with those consequences, put that here. If it is helping one side of a civil war, you're going to want to put that in your campaign. If the main thing is you are on a ship delivering packages through space, that's what you're going to want to put in this description, the main idea behind your campaign. And keep it short. Again, just 1 paragraph is perfect, sometimes 1.5 paragraphs, but you don't want to overload your players with that information yet. It's not all that important. As long as you get the main ideas in there, that's what matters. Everything else can come later after they've already bought into your campaign. The second thing your campaign pitch should include is the difficulty level, or, well, how I like to call it, the lethality of a campaign. You should tell your players, how hard is it gonna be? How difficult is this world? How likely is it to kill them? There are players out there who are really not okay with character death, and high lethality campaigns just aren't for them. There are players who love a challenge and are gonna be kind of disappointed with a very easy campaign. Putting the lethality in there, letting them know this is how dangerous the world is, This is how hard I'm going to try to kill you. This is how difficult it is to survive in this world, or this is how difficult this system tends to be. All of those things should be factored in, and you should give your campaign a difficulty or lethality rating. I find it's super easy for this to just use a couple words, just say really easy, beginner friendly, intermediate, moderate, or, you know, high lethality, difficult, you know, extreme difficulty, stuff like that. It's very easy to just put that in there, just a word or two under lethality or difficulty, and let your players know how difficult it's going to be, because that matters a lot to your players. It may not seem as big of an issue starting out, but like that will matter down the road, especially in your campaign. So you want to let them know what they're in for before they get into it. Next thing you're going to want to let them know is the genre of the campaign. This can be done in your campaign description, but it's something that should be included somewhere in your campaign pitch. Let them know what genre you're playing in. Is it a Western style? Is it a sci-fi? Is it traditional fantasy? Very simple things, just let your players know what genre is your campaign. Some people, not into sci-fi, won't want to play in a trek across the universe. Other people, going to be super into it. So it's very easy to just like let them know this is the genre. If there's not like a concrete genre, feel free to mix them. Say like this is weird fiction mixed with fantasy, this is a horror western, you know, let them know sort of where it falls in a genre. If you can't quite pinpoint it, feel free to use multiple, feel free to use different descriptors, but it's always a good thing to let your players know. The next thing you're going to want to include in your campaign pitch is, I think, probably the second most important point for you to include, and that is how much roleplay versus how much combat will there be in the campaign. I find there are a few different types of players. There are the players who are really into combat, they want to learn the systems, they want to optimize things, they want the strategy of it. There are those players. There are the players who really just want to roleplay and hang out and play their character, and they want to interact with the world as their character. They care a little bit less about the systems. And then there are people in the middle who want to keep things kind of balanced. I think it's important to let your players know how much roleplay do you plan on there being. You can never fully plan it out, but like how much roleplay do you plan on there being? How much combat do you plan on there being? Is it going to be a nice 50-50? Is it going to be a very roleplay heavy campaign? Is it going to get political? Is it going to be a very like tactics heavy campaign happening on a battlefield? Let them know how much roleplay and how much combat you plan to have in your campaign. Very simple. All you need to put for this is it going to be a high, medium, or low roleplay campaign, high, medium, low combat campaign? All you need to let them know, just little line, couple of words on the sheet, let them know what you expect going into it. This can always change as you feel out your table and as time goes on. There might be more roleplay, or they might get like really into a certain combat system and you want to explore that later. It can be flexible. You should be flexible. Everyone at the table should be having fun. But let them know what you expect going into it, what you plan for. Next category is dungeon delving expectations. Very similar to roleplay and combat. Will there be dungeons in your campaign? A dungeon is more than just one encounter. It is a set of encounters, often a location where the players will be alone with each other as a party for a little while, expected to overcome puzzles as well as combat encounters, you know, traditional dungeon stuff. Will there be dungeon delving in your campaign? If so, how much of it? How often? Let your players know. This is a little less important than the roleplay combat thing, but it's still a good thing to let people know, because some people just love a dungeon delve. Other people want to be out exploring the more like urban world, or, you know, out in the forest. They want more of the open campaign than a bunch of dungeons, but some people just really want a dungeon. So let them know how much dungeon delving there's going to be in your campaign. The next thing that should be included is the system and landscape of your campaign. So already, hopefully when you approach players, you're already not saying, do you want to play in my tabletop RPG campaign? Instead you're saying, do you want to play in my D&D campaign? Or do you want to play in my Pathfinder campaign? Or do you want to play in my Shadowrun campaign? Something like that. Let them know what system you're going to be playing in. Also, let your players know what books from that system you're going to be using, if there are any that you explicitly want to exclude. This is also the place where you should let your players know how much homebrew your campaign is going to have, if any. If you're just sticking to a book, let them know. We're sticking to this book, we're sticking to these books. If you are mixing in homebrew with a setting that's already been pre-made, let them know that. Or if it's completely homebrew, let them know just the tiniest bit about your homebrew world, and let them know that it's going to be a high homebrew campaign. In addition to this, landscape should also describe what kind of landscape they're going to be in. You do not need to go into dense descriptions, but saying something like, you're going to be going on a trek through the mountains. This is a very Nordic location. Or the majority of this takes place underwater or in the desert. Or the landscape is split between dense jungles and like large empty plains. Or this is an urban campaign and there's very little natural space left as everything's been developed. So there won't be much nature to explore, but there will be a lot of city exploration. This is also the space to include that information to just give your players a little bit more of a taste of what the campaign might be like. It's not as important, but it can really intrigue certain players and push them towards wanting to participate in your game if, you know, you're doing, say, an underwater campaign and they really love underwater and submarines and like fish and stuff. They might be way more hyped about your campaign if you've just given them those little sprinklings of like what the setting might be like. Now, the final and the absolute most important thing for you to include in your campaign pitch is player buy-in. What is player buy-in? Player buy-in is the thing your players will have to buy into, will have to agree to, will have to want to do in order to participate in your campaign. If they are not interested in buying into this one thing, they will not fit with the campaign. It is a very important category. Their reaction to this one part of your campaign pitch is going to tell you everything you're going to need to know about if they should have a seat at that table. This section is going to be the most telling for if that potential player is going to fit with your campaign. So for example, with the current campaign I'm running, the player buy-in section of my pitch to my players was your character's story would be extremely important to the dungeons and direction of the campaign, but the risk of losing them is higher than normal given the situation they find themselves in. If you like redemption arcs, Lovecraftian horror, and scavenging, then this is the campaign for you. So that's all I had to put in my buy-in. If my players read that and said, I'm not interested in having to like scavenge and like survive hardcore, if they were like, I'm not cool with horror or weird stuff, if they didn't want a player character focused experience, any of those things, I think that they would tell me. They would either tell me or they would hopefully tell me, but they would read that and they would know this is a campaign for me or this isn't a campaign for me. It's saying, this is what your characters will be expected of your characters. This is how the world has to function, how it might affect the systems. You have to buy into this in order to be a part of this campaign. Now, we have technically covered everything that should be included in a campaign pitch, but I'm going to add another thing that you can add if you're sure that these are going to be the players at your table, say you're giving them multiple pitches, or as soon as you've gotten an agreement to your pitch and you have gained a player at your table, you can also just include it with the pitch because it might matter more to some people than others, but it's not quite as important. And that thing is character creation guidelines. I would put this separate from your campaign pitch, and in your character creation guidelines, you're essentially going to reiterate what system you're using, what books are allowed from that system, if there are any homebrew materials that you're using that might come into character creation. You're also going to let them know what level they're going to be starting out at, if it's a system that uses levels, most do. Also, their starting currencies, starting equipment, how that's going to be handled. If there are any alignment requirements, if you're playing with a system that still uses alignments, that kind of thing can be very important to include for certain campaigns so that you make sure that the group of characters that you get end up meshing with each other. And then just include any other information that they need when making their characters. For example, my campaign is about fallen gods, so every single player character is a fallen god, and that was a requirement that I would put in my other information for them. Like, you have to build a character based on a god, and that has fallen, and which gods were up for grabs, that sort of thing. Your other info might also be like, you are coming into this as tradespeople, so your character is going to have to be a tradesperson. Or it can be as simple as, you know, like, if there are certain species or races that don't exist in certain parts of your world, you might want to include that, like, here's the ones that exist in this part of the world. It can also include any other restrictions that you need to include about character creation. Now, you're ready to create your campaign pitch, but this has been a bit of a long video and you might not want to rewatch it more than once. So, what's an easy way to create your campaign pitch? Well, we've created a document just for you. I've been holding it through most of this video. It also comes in other colors. And it's available for free on the silverdicesociety.com. It says your call to adventure at the top, follows with spaces for information welcoming people to the campaign, the basic campaign information they need, spaces to include your lethality or difficulty. There are multiple different formats of this. The wording is changed on some of them. The amount of roleplay, dungeon delving, politics, information about your world, and the player buy-in. We even created matching character guideline sheets so you can easily print it out and write it out, or just grab yourself the PDF copy and type in your information. Use this as a guideline. It's available for free on the silverdicesociety.com. It is free now. It will be free forever. Membership to the website is always free. And we have not only this in 6 different colors, but we have tons of other resources for running your game and for enjoying the game as a player. We even have matching character creation notes that can all be found at silverdicesociety.com/resources, and it is up there forever. We also have this video in blog post format. Both of those things will be linked in the description down below if you want to check them out. Aside from that, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I would love it if in the comments below you would put your campaign pitches or your campaign ideas. If you think you have a really strong format for a campaign pitch and you want to leave a comment like pitching your campaign to us, I would love to read those down below. We might like read them in a future video and react to them and critique them. Share your pitches with us. We would love to hear them. If you like this video, consider giving it a like. If you really liked it, check out another one of our videos. If you also like that, maybe consider subscribing. If you're interested, because I talked a lot about lethality in this video, if you're interested in a medium to high lethality campaign, I suggest watching Shadows over Filoria, which is our current semi-animated podcast campaign that the Silver Dice Society is running. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that your next campaign is a great one.